special meeting. We only have one thing tonight to discuss, and the purpose of our meeting is to discuss the future of the transportation department here at Gladwin Community Schools. Therefore, we will dispense, we have no draft minutes nor treasury report. And at this time, once again, I will call, would anyone like to speak tonight in public comment?
Yes, I would.
Okay, would you, we had a sign-up sheet, but would you please
Yes, I
come
did sign
and, okay, would you please come and state your name?
Yes, my name is Judy Lorenz.
Okay, go right ahead.
I wanted to ask about the millage that didn't pass. A little bit more. I don't believe everybody understood everything. That if the millage didn't pass, what would happen with the busing to the school. Anybody I've talked to, parents, they weren't aware that if that millage didn't pass, that we were possibly looking at privatization. That wasn't brought up. None of the parents I talked to or anybody, nobody knew anything about this.
Actually, it was in the Gladwin County Record. They did an interview with me, and one of the options that I did outline in that article was that we would may have to consider the privatization of transportation.
Okay, but everybody I talked to, nobody knew that that was an option.
And that I can't answer to, other than the fact that we did have it in the record, and we also had a video interview that the Gladwin County Record did, and that was stated in the video interview with the Gladwin County Record that they had on their website as well.
Okay.
So it was definitely out there in the media that it was one of the possibilities. If people didn't know that, I can't answer why. All I can tell you is that we were very open about that being a potential or one of the possibilities if the bond didn't pass. Okay.
Another question I have is, with us having that fire with that bus, and you told us yesterday that we got different responses from you on the money back from the insurance company.
Yep.
Anywhere from $15,000 to $22,000. With knowing the bus situation for the next school year, you said that money was put into the general fund.
The money that we got back from the bus, and I don't know off the top of my head how much money we got from the burned out bus. Okay. But that money is in the general fund, yes.
Okay. In order for us to operate this next school year, we talked to you yesterday about this. You said that we would have to have 3 buses minimum.
Right.
And we could lease them at $13,000.
Approximately.
Okay. Well, there's almost 2 buses right there.
Well, no, we didn't get that much for that bus. I do know that. But again, that money goes into the general fund, and it may be used for buses. It may be used for bus parts for the other buses that we have. It may be used to pay the heat bill for the school district. It goes into the general fund. The transportation budget does not exist as a separate entity. Money comes from the general fund into transportation to fund it, and that's how it's put together. So there's no special pots of money just for.
Okay, but I guess I'm looking at when a bus burns, we lost a bus.
Right.
So that money that you get back for the insurance from that bus.
Yeah.
It should have been put aside, and we should have been able to purchase another bus.
Well, and it may be used for that. Yeah, we may use money from the general fund. I mean, the dollars don't come in, and we don't take those dollars and say this is going to be bus money. It goes into the general fund. Now, if the board were to decide to lease buses, and that's one of the options they're considering, if the board were to decide to do that, that money may be part of what gets spent to lease buses.
Okay.
Yeah. So what you're saying may actually happen.
Okay. And then with you showing us a spreadsheet on the different options yesterday.
Yep.
There's only like $60,000 difference. And there's a couple bus drivers retiring.
Yep.
And usually when a driver retires, Ernie doesn't replace that driver. Usually we absorb that route.
If we can, we do, yeah.
Right.
We try to.
So there's more money that would be saved.
Possibly. Yep.
I'm just looking at, to help us with our jobs.
Sure. Yeah. No, you're definitely right. That's one of the options that the board is considering also.
Okay.
So yep, that'll be before the board. When I actually explain the different options that are on the table for the board to consider, you'll see that that's one of them.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? All right. We have have no administrator reports, we have no committee reports. We're going to move right to the action item, and Mr. Seebeck, would you like to speak to the options that you have presented to the board?
The board has several options to consider with failure of the bond issue to purchase the badly needed school buses to run this year. As part of the options, part of considering the options, the board directed me to go out and seek bids, to put out an RFP, a request for proposal, for private vendors to provide transportation to the students of the district. That being said, at that point in time, and up until this point now, those RFPs are proposals. None of them have been accepted by the board. The board has several options, as I mentioned earlier, to consider. Let me start by saying there were three vendors that replied to our RFP: Auxilio Services, Dean Transportation, and First Student Transportation. Of the three vendors that replied to the RFP, only one of them, Auxilio, had a price that was less money than what we currently are planning to spend in transportation for next year. So Auxilio was the only bid that will be considered as an option this evening, for the obvious reasons. Why would we privatize transportation and then spend more than we had spent in the past or had anticipated spending in the future? It wouldn't make any sense to do that. That said, one option the board is considering tonight, or will consider tonight, is outsourcing the transportation department to Auxilio Services. The second option that the board is considering is keeping the bus transportation services in-house, running it as it is, and leasing 4 buses. If we were to lease those 4 buses, there'd be an approximate cost of about $50,000 to the district to do that. Leasing those 4 buses, that's a one-year option. If they were to lease those buses, the following year, they would need to lease 4 more. The following year, they need to lease 4 more. You can see where the costs would escalate. The plan would have to be, at that point, if we were to go with option 2, the board would have to consider, more than consider, the board would have to approve seeking another millage in the springtime and seeing if the public felt differently about it at that point in time. Keeping transportation in-house and leasing buses within a time frame to rotate our fleet to keep the buses safe and you guys on the road, we just can't afford to do that. So leasing the buses would be a short-term fix with the bond running again in the springtime. Third option the board's looking at is, again, leasing buses, only leasing 3 buses. Bernie and I have met, and we believe that we could get by, and I use the term intentionally, we could get by with 3 buses leased as opposed to 4. It would not be an optimal situation, but it could be done. We could make that work. The board could do that. It would be an approximate cost of right around $40,000, $38,000 to $40,000 to do that. Keep in mind that those are dollars that are not in the current budget. So if the board were to approve to lease any buses, they would have to be approving the potential of running a deficit budget over what they've already approved. Now, Judy, to answer your question, one of the things that has happened is yesterday we received some retirements through the Transportation Division, and those retirements raised the possibility that if those routes could be eliminated and drivers not hired to drive those routes, obviously because they're gone, would there be enough money saved to cover the cost of leasing the buses for this year? And the answer is maybe, and it's a big maybe, because one of the routes is a special needs route. And though that is dependent upon the number of students that need that route in order to get to school, and there are legal obligations that the district has along with that. So if both of those routes could be eliminated, the cost savings would be very close to the cost of leasing the 3 buses. But that's a big if. It could happen, it may not. Bernie and I worked on it till late last night. I think we spoke last at after 11 o'clock, working on that very idea that you brought up so good job. Can it work? Maybe. And it's a big maybe, and for the reasons that I just explained. Again, if the board were to choose to keep transportation in-house and lease buses, it would be a Band-Aid solution that would only take care of this year while the board went out and approved running another bond issue in the spring of next year. If the board were to not run a bond proposal, if the board were to decide not to do that, we would be back to where we are right now. We simply can't lease buses over the long term. We don't have the revenue to do that. We certainly don't have the revenue to buy them, which is what's brought us to this situation to begin with. And let me be clear before I move on to, well, let me go to option 4, then I'll explain further. The fourth option the board can consider is to outsource transportation to auxiliary services. There has been a lot of talk amongst people both in and out of the district, and board members have asked me questions when we've talked, and their questions have been out of concern for the drivers. What will happen to the drivers? Will they be taken care of? How will they be taken care of? They're loyal employees. This is not about their employees. It's not about their performance. It's not about them as people. This is a business decision, but we still, myself included, feel strongly that we need to take care of you as best as we can. Out of those discussions came an idea that we do have 3 bus drivers that are very close to they're very deeply vested in the retirement system, I guess is the best way to put it, meaning that they have 19 plus years with the district. And if we were to outsource, those employees, in fact all the employees in transportation, would no longer be contributing to the public school employees retirement system. For those 3 drivers that have the most seniority, that would be devastating at a level that is difficult for the board to understand, simply because of the high number of years that they have and the loyal service that they have to the district. So option number 4 includes having the top 3 senior drivers stay on as Gladwin Community Schools employees in the capacity that that we would work on together to make sure that we did that in a proper manner, allowing them to maintain their service in the not to maintain, but to allow them to continue in the Michigan school employees retirement system. So that's option 4. Now to clarify for everyone here and for the Board of Education, the decision comes down to whether or not the board wants to run another bond issue to try to ask the community to support purchasing school buses. If the board is not at the place where they believe that is the way to go, then the logical choice becomes to outsource transportation, which is option number 1 or option number 4. It's just option number 1 again being standard outsourcing, option number 4 being the outsourcing with the top 3 drivers remaining employees in the district. If the board does want to go out for another bond issue in the springtime, if that's something that they would consider doing, then option number 3, leasing the 3 buses and perhaps using some of the dollars that may have been saved through the retirement, again, may be saved through the recent retirements by recent yesterday of some of the transportation employees, may offset some of part of the cost of leasing those buses. So it really comes down to, I believe, first is where the board stands as far as running another bond issue and whether or not they believe, that is an appropriate thing to do at this time. That said, those are the options that are on the table. I will reiterate for the board and for you and for the public that I spent time with the bus drivers yesterday, quite a bit of time. None of what I have just explained is new to them. We met as a group and we spent time together going over these options and talking about them and brainstorming them and talking about how it may impact them and how this meeting would run itself. So if there seems to be a lack of discussion from the folks in the audience or from, or from me, that's why. We have already been through this together. So with that said, are there any questions from the Board of Education of me?
Yes, I have one. On option 4, part of option 4 is to keep the top 3 employees that have 19 years or more of service.
Approximately, yeah.
Is this for 1 year or for more years?
My thoughts were as long as they choose to remain is the way you would have to do that. I don't believe it would be fair to sunset that on those employees. I'm not sure that would be. I'm not sure that would be a reasonable request to make of them, or a reasonable thing for us to do.
Are there any other questions with Mr. Seebeck?
I have a more, I'm not going to call it that, I was going to say, our financial issues are not forever, right?
Well, no, nothing lasts forever. The reality with public education in the state of Michigan right now is it doesn't matter who you are or where you are, there are financial issues. Revenues are not meeting expenditures in most places. And in order for boards of education to balance budgets, they're making tough choices everywhere you go. My guess is that Auxiliary Services is not just engaged in an RFP process with Gladwin at this point in time. I know many other districts are engaged in the very same type of process on multiple levels, whether it be for their support services, custodial, grounds maintenance, or transportation. There just isn't enough money because of the economy to continue to fund public education at the level that we have been funded prior to about 5 or 6 years ago. So in answer to your question, Kelly, I don't foresee that changing anytime soon. Michigan's economy hasn't picked up to the point where that will change. Gladwin's economy certainly hasn't picked up to the point where that will change. So the adjustments that we're making right now and the adjustments we have been making to our budget over the past several years, I don't believe are things that are going to change and we're going to be able to go back to the way things used to be, if you will. This is our new reality. This is the way things I believe are going to stay, and we're going to continue to have to adjust our budget and make painful decisions for the foreseeable future.
So you don't believe that if the economy turns around and, you know, the economy, I want to say, perks up or anything, and in Michigan we're doing better, that things are going to get back to, quote, normal? No,
that's not going to happen. It would be, in my opinion, it would be foolhardy to think that things will get back to the way they were before we started making some of the reductions that we've made in the past several years. I think this is just the new reality of public education for the foreseeable future. Now that said, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can't see that happening. And part of it is declining enrollment. When I became a superintendent 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, we had 1,890 some students in the district. We're budgeting for right around 1,730 this year. So as enrollment continues to decline, dollars don't come into the district. So not only are we dealing with a drop in the amount of money or a decrease in the amount of money that schools get, we're also getting less money because of the enrollment decline that we and districts around us have experienced over the last several years. And I don't see that changing either. Other questions?
We discussed the savings from the first option. The other options, obviously, we're going to spend more out of our budget with the second and third, correct?
Yes, you will spend dollars that you currently do not have budgeted if you were to choose to keep transportation in-house.
Correct. And then with the fourth, it's essentially almost a break even with the chance of, we will pretty much roll the dice on millage.
Not number 4. Number 4 is outsourcing, keeping the top 3 drivers as school employees.
Yeah.
So I would not expect that we would run another millage with that one, although the board could tell me that that's what they want to do. You can do that anytime you want, whether you're outsourced or not outsourced.
But the other ones we're pretty much rolling the dice on whether or not a millage would pass after they've already not passed it once.
Number 2 and number 3, which are the 2 options that keep transportation in-house.
Correct.
And of the 2, number 3 is the most viable simply because we can get by with 3 buses and spend less money that we don't have to make that happen, with the potential that the retirements that we have could offset some of that cost.
Right.
Okay. That all said, if you do one of those in-house options and don't run a bond issue, you can't continue that option for another year unless you're willing to deficit spend your budget. You would have to have a bond issue. The bond issue would have to pass to offset the cost of the need to replace the buses. Remember, we need to replace at least 3 buses every single year, really 4, to have it be right over the course of the next 6 years. So that's a cost of right around $2.3 million. So if you choose to keep transportation in-house, you have to generate $2.3 million over the course of the next 6 years. And the only way you're going to do that is to pass bonds.
For clarification purposes, how many support staff did we end up laying off from from also the other cuts?
I think it was 6.
6 support staff and then 1 teacher?
1 teacher, yep,
Okay.
are on layoff right now to attempt to balance the budget for next year.
So basically, with us trying to keep transportation in-house in any way, shape, or form, doesn't do them any favors either, I guess, as well as...
Well, it doesn't do your budget any favors.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean by that, is our budget. I mean, we've already budgeted for them not to be here, and then...
Yeah, the board's in a difficult spot, there's no doubt about it. You know, we're, as I mentioned earlier, declining enrollment, revenue not meeting expenditures. You have to make reductions. In this situation we have with transportation, you've got $2.3 million in expenditures out there if you're going to rotate your bus fleet, and you have to rotate your bus fleet. You can't continue to run what you got. You have to figure out a way to get $2.3 million, or you have to figure out a way to pass those costs along to somebody else. Well, I don't see the government giving us $2.3 million anytime soon. And I say that facetiously, but that's just not going to happen. So that means you have to generate $2.3 million worth of revenue by passing that cost along to somebody else. Well, who are you going to pass it along to? You have 2 choices. You can pass that capital overhead to purchase buses, that cost. You can pass it off to the taxpayers through a bond issue, or you can pass it off to a vendor. And that's why we did the RFP. We tried to have that cost borne by the taxpayer, and the bond issue failed. So that's why we went out and said, okay, if we can't get the public to pay for the need to pay for school buses, and I certainly understand why not. It's tough all over. I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that the public should or should not have done what they did when they voted. That's their prerogative. They get to vote, and they did. It's up to us then to make the adjustments necessary to deal with that. But when the public said that they could not afford that bond to buy those buses, we then have to look at where else those costs could be passed along to, which is a vendor, which is what we did. Now the question becomes, do you want to try again? Is there value in trying that bond again? And if there's value in trying that bond again, maybe option 2 or option 3, where you keep it in-house, is viable, if you're willing to roll the dice on that bond passing. If it doesn't, you will have spent money that you don't have, and you will have had a bond issue that doesn't make it, and you'll be right back in this meeting with these people all again in approximately a year. That's the reality of the decision that you have before you. Now, you know, I tell people all the time, and I have told any of the board members who have asked, and I'll tell you folks, and I told you yesterday, but I'll say it again just so that you hear it publicly. These decisions are not just dollars and cents decisions, and I have been very adamant about that. You folks don't just have little dollar signs over your head. That's not how we see things. It's certainly not how I see things. I hope you know that. Your people, your loyal people, your hardworking people, you live here. We shop at the same grocery stores. We go to the same churches. Our kids play on the same teams. All that good stuff happens. So it's not just a dollars and cents decision. So that does weigh heavily on the board's shoulders and on mine. At the end of the day, the board's got to figure out what to do with that $2 million cost hanging over their head. And as I said, there are 2 ways to deal with that. Outsource transportation, let somebody else deal with it, or ask the taxpayers to deal with it. We've asked the taxpayers to deal with it. They said no. And again, understandably so, these are tough times for everybody. But now the board has to decide, are they willing to go that route again, try that again, see what happens, or do they believe it's time to move forward with having that cost borne by a vendor? So there's the options that are before the board. I'll continue to entertain questions if there are any.
I have a comment. Out in the community, I didn't hear a lot of negativity about the bond issue. I frankly was surprised that it didn't pass, because I was not hearing people trashing that bond issue. There was more pessimism about Beaverton's not passing. You know, and when the election was over, everyone was kind of surprised, at least some of the people that I talked to, because Beaverton's passed and ours did not. So, trying to figure out why ours did not. It wasn't because Rick wasn't out there pounding the pavement and trying to get votes. It wasn't because other people weren't working on those issues. It's because the people that supported it did not come to the polls and vote. we lost that bond issue by not that many votes. 59 votes. That's not a large margin. We could have found 59 votes if we had, well, 60 votes if we had dug for them. The thing is, I know that if we did go for a bond issue, it would be difficult because we do have taxpayers in our district that have moved in here, and they have no vested interest. They never had a kid go to school here, they never had a grandkid go to school here, and they simply don't want to pay any more taxes. So you are fighting that all the time. And we've had a lot of people move in from the city, and they figure it's going to be cheaper up here, and so they don't want to pay any more taxes. The one thing I did notice from the bond issue is the city of Gladwin passed it. Buttman Township passed it. Gladwin Township passed it. None of the others did, which is really strange to me because, except for Buttman, those other townships are all out in the boonies. They're the ones that require transportation services the most. And they did not support it. And I don't know if any of you have any ideas why they didn't. Is it the tax issue? Is it the fact they don't want to pay any more taxes?
I just think they didn't vote, period. I just don't think. And then you also have a lot of them that are in a different school district, like Stacy and Dan.
Right, I know, there's Claire, Beaverton School
They're in
District,
Grove
Claire.
Township, but they're in Beaverton School District, they can't vote. So, you know, that could be an issue too, I'm not sure, but.
Well, I mean, if we did another millage campaign, then we would have to, everybody would have to work their butts off. And I mean, I know Beaverton went door to door and put signs out and did all sorts of things.
I could do some way.
I could support going for a bond issue. I don't know, you know, how, but if that bond issue didn't pass, that would be our last shot at it. We would not ever ask for a transportation millage again. It just wouldn't be worth it because it costs money to run an election, and even if you do work your butt off, you don't know that it's gonna pass. So we're taking a chance. We're taking a huge chance if we do it. The thing that makes me want to try again is you people, because as Rick said, you have been loyal employees. You have been, you know, you have gone the extra mile with our kids. You've been a whole lot, you know, you've done a whole lot of extra things for them that normally people don't do. So I would feel better if I had a child that there was a bus driver driving that bus that knew my kid. So, and I haven't had kids in this school for a long time. But I have always thought that the bus drivers as a whole supported things. They were supportive of the school, and they always were loyal employees. So that is what is making me, you know, want to do this again. But we would need every one of your help. I mean, everybody would have to, because it's your job. It's not mine. I mean, if it doesn't pass, then I'm going to have to vote to outsource transportation. I'm not going to have a choice. So I don't know how anybody else on the board feels about that, but I would be for going for a millage.
At the end of the day, we sat here, 3 weeks ago, and we looked at some of the support staff who were in the same situation as these drivers, you know, and I felt just as bad because I know, you know, most of the, why didn't you do anything for us? You know, or the teacher that we gave a pink slip to says, well, why didn't you fight for my job? And that's something I think that needs to be considered as a district from that 10,000-foot view as a whole. I know Rick sat right here at the meeting and told the secretaries or the support staff, you know, we're not an employment agency, and it is a grim thing, I guess, to say, but it's true. You know, that's the first one. If we save $60,000, that could go towards curriculum, books. You know, does it put the bus drivers in a bind? Yes, but then you've got support staff in the same sentence that, you know, you've got support staff right now who weren't outsourced and don't have a job next year. Whereas the bus drivers, if they do get outsourced, would have a job. You know, and I feel rough saying that because I've been in that situation before and been laid off before. So that's where I come from. I mean, it just, to me, it just makes more sense to, since we're trying to budget to not go expenditures over revenues like we did last year. And of course, this also goes off the cases saying that we will have no teacher illnesses, no long hard winters, nothing major happened to any other buses like an accident. We're really rolling the dice on that if we do go for millage. That's just kind of, I mean, and then if the millage doesn't pass, we've spent that money plus, and then we're really in a deeper bind than when we started. If it were me, you know, and again, even with option 4 to say we're going to keep the 3 most seniority people, to be quite honest, and again, I don't mean it anything personally, I'm looking at it from, you know, as we're taught as school board members to look at things from a 10,000-foot view, which is difficult to do with a small school district. But then you also have support staff that says, well, wait a minute, I've been here a few years, I've been a loyal employee, I think I've done good work for this district, and I'm sitting at home, or I'm looking for another job. You know, and I'm just saying is if we didn't offer these options, and we weren't able to offer these options to the support staff or to that teacher. So I think that's something that needs to be also considered.
Well, it's kind of apples and oranges though, because the millage did not affect the people that you're talking about.
I believe it did.
Well, I mean, it did because there was a cost to us, but it wasn't, the millage and their jobs were not directly connected like these people are. I mean, it's a direct connection. So, that's it. I'm said what I'm gonna say, so you guys know where I'm coming from.
These people aren't gonna be losing their jobs though.
Well, that you don't know. You have to be fair, and in my conversations with Auxilio, they do make a commitment to the employees that do drive for the district to allow them the first, I believe if I say this right, the first right of refusal for the positions driving for the district. So it ultimately, it's up to the driver. Do they want to drive for the vendor or not? Is what it boils down to. Did I say that right, Ed?
Yeah, there's a set time period that,
absolutely. There are legalities involved, but
but they're given the option.
Yep. Other questions of me?
I guess my only question is if we do option 4, why were you stating that we would take the bond off the table?
Well, you don't have to take the bond off the table with option 4. You could run a bond issue, and if it were to pass, unprivatize. From my perspective as a leader of the district, the change over from self-operated to a vendor-provided service is an enormous task. It consumes enormous energy, and it does consume some financial resources as well. To do it for just 8 months would be a foolhardy use, I believe, of my energy in leading the district. You know, it would not be a good expenditure of time, energy, or money. It's a big job to switch things over.
Well, and I think Rick and I talked about this a little bit this afternoon, that once you outsource, you're pretty much outsourced.
One of the things that has come up, and a question that has been asked often, is would we sell our buses to the vendor? And the answer to that question is no, we wouldn't. We would maintain ownership of our fleet. So if things didn't work out with the vendor, we wouldn't be in a bad situation where we wouldn't have any buses. Other districts that are close to us have sold their fleets to the vendor, and then if it doesn't work out, there's nothing they can do. They don't have any buses to go back to. My belief is you should hang on to your buses, and if it doesn't work out, you can go back if you have to. You still leave that as a viable option if necessary. So we will maintain ownership of our bus fleet. The vendor will provide the buses necessary each year to replace ours that leave service due to age or it couldn't make problems.
It would be a good idea to just sell them, and then invest what we get off them, so that if, you know, when Auxilio, if we decide they're done, you know, we've got a pot of money there to buy buses.
Our bus fleet's valued, if we were to sell every bus for top dollar, it's valued at around $500,000. A school bus right now is about $85,000 to $90,000. So we run 19 buses, so we could buy 5 with the money that we got from selling ours. We had to buy 5 new ones, so that's probably not, wouldn't be a wise plan to embark on.
Any questions? This is not an easy decision, folks. I didn't sleep well last night.
Can you read the options to us again?
Option number 1, outsource the transportation department to Auxilio. This option would save the district approximately $70,000 in the next fiscal year. Option number 2, keep transportation in-house and lease 4 buses. This option would cost the district approximately $50,000 beyond what is currently in the budget for the next fiscal year. Option number 3 changed, correct?
No, it's still that option.
Okay. Option number 3, keep transportation in-house and lease only 3 buses. This option would cost the district approximately $40,000 beyond what is currently in the budget for the next fiscal year. Option number 4, outsource the transportation department to Auxilio and keep all transportation employees that have 19 years or more as employees of the district. This would protect their retirement. This option would approximately break even. There are 3 employees in this category. Once again, please remember that if a millage election in the spring is a possibility, it will cost the district approximately $10,000 to run a special election.
I make a motion.
Whoa.
Oh,
Hold on.
Stop. Okay.
The
Carol,
19
you have the floor.
plus years, the 3 people. But we've had 3 people retire.
Yeah.
So do we still have people at that 19 plus years, or are we just saying the most senior people?
No, we still have 3 people there.
We still have 3 people there?
We do.
If we have 6?
There were 4. Yeah, one of the people that retired did not have that many years with the district.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right, due to the amount of discussion and questions and comments, I will now open the floor for a motion to approve what number option?
I make a motion that we approve option number 4.
All right, Carol has moved that we approve and accept option number 4. Is there a second to her motion? I second it. All right, is there any further discussion or comment?
Yes.
Go ahead, you have the floor.
At the end of the day with option 4, as a board, we're supposed to be deciding a balanced budget. We're here to deal with those dollars, whether it is a nice thing or not to do. And again, it might be the unpopular thing to say, but we said it to the support staff that we're not, here as an employment agency, we're here with the interest of the children. And there's a possibility of breaking even there. And I mean, again, there's no certainty. The only certainty we have is the first option that we're certain to actually save money.
Well, and
Go ahead, Carol.
you know, it's those hard, tough calls that none of us wanna make, and I don't wanna make it for you guys. I mean, I know it would be devastating if somebody came to me after I worked 10 or 15 years and said, you know, your retirement will have to be frozen at this point, and you have the option of going somewhere else and working for the state or whatever, you know, for the school system. And I know that's not easy, and I want you to know that that is not an easy decision. But on the other side of the coin, when we look at impact to our students, when we are talking 40,000 or 30,000 or 50,000 coming out of our budget, what we're saying is, you know, that's an athletic program, or that's a teacher, or, you know, that's books, that's something big, something that in a budget our size has a negative impact. And so as I look at weighing, do I want these same people picking up the kids? Yes, I do. Do I want the same people with the same qualities being hired? I do. So it's not that I don't want what we already have and maintain these people. And I know that we have seen with the other outsourcing that those people have been allowed to apply and have received jobs. And in good faith, that's what we're hearing. And in good faith, I would encourage, if this passes, that you do apply for those jobs. I mean, you know our kids, you know our routes, you know the athletic events and where you're going. So I would encourage that. But at the end of the day, and we look at that balanced budget in the schools that have been running in deficit year after year after year, and running into problems where they're being taken over and they're being, looked at from the state, we don't want to get ourselves into that situation. And so, unfortunately, that's why I made the motion.
Are there any other questions or comments? I have met many of the people that have been in the districts that have emergency managers. And they truly don't know how they're gonna get out of the situation. And I've met them at NASB conferences and classes, and I do not, as a board president, I do not want us to get into that situation. I think we need a balanced budget. I think we cannot stack the cards against us. We have to look at the dollars and cents. We don't, as a board, do not want to reduce program. That's one of the reasons that we have so many out-of-district students that come to us because of our program. It's one of the reasons that Claire has so many people come out of district to their district. I'm afraid, and I will openly say this, I'm afraid if we reduce program to meet $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 deficit, that we're going to lose even more students. And we're going to have a tremendous negative impact on the students that are left by increasing class size. And at the lower grade levels, that can be very detrimental to the students and their families. And I've taken that into consideration, and I've thought long and hard about this. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion or questions? Then I'm going to call for a vote. We have a motion to approve option number 4. It has been moved by Carol, seconded by myself. Therefore, all those in favor signify by say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
All right, just for,
Okay, I didn't vote,
I
guys.
know, just for clarification, then I would like to,
And so The motion fails.
I would like to make a motion for option 1, and the only guarantee we have of actually saving money and balancing our budget this year.
Second.
Alright, it's been, okay. Alright, it has been moved by Eric to approve option number 1, and seconded by Joe.
Would you read it, please?
Alright, option number 1 is outsource the transportation department to Auxilio. This option would save the district approximately $70,000 in the next fiscal year. It says nothing about employees or leasing buses or anything. Strictly outsourcing the transportation to Auxilio. Any other questions or comments on this motion?
I would. The reason I'm making the motion, and again, it's not because I have a disrespect for any of the busing or any of the employees of the district. It hurts me to do it, but it also hurt me 3 weeks ago when we had to look at the support staff and go, don't have to tell you we're sorry. You know, and what hurt me with that one is I knew that there were employees that were going to be laid off. At the end of the day, as a school board, we're instructed to balance a budget. This is the only thing that guarantees that we do that. As a school board, we're taught to take a 10,000-foot view and not look at people and names. Again, like I say, it's hard to do in a small school district. If this was a Class A school with thousands of, students and hundreds of employees, you guys would all be numbers, and this would probably be an easier job, but it's not. I don't want to come across as that fact that I don't care about people or their jobs that have been there. And it's not a popular decision, but it's the only thing that, as a school board, we're taught that we are supposed to do, and that is to save money and put money in the bottom line. And that is money that technically can go to the school, to the kids. And that's where it belongs as far as I'm concerned, in books, curriculum, and education. Transportation is very important. My kids ride a bus. My kids rode one of the worst ones that is not going to pass state inspection this year. I know this. And, I have a lot of respect for what you guys do. My grandfather was a bus driver here in Gladwin for years.
My bus driver.
And I just, I don't make this motion with any intentions of really hurting employees, but at the same time, it's just smart business.
Amen to that.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to approve option number 1. Are you ready to vote, members of the board? All right, all those in favor of option number 1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, it's close. Let's call for
call
clarification
again.
for
Okay.
a roll call vote.
Eric? Dan?
Aye.
Darlington?
No.
Winarski? No. Hightower?
Yes.
Gower?
Yes.
Schwager?
No.
We have a tie.
Okay.
Motion fails.
Mr. Withrow is absent, the motion fails. Okay, in the interest of getting something done tonight, and you guys also all know how I feel, but we have to do something tonight, we have to get this resolved. So, I am going to move that we go with option 4, to outsource to Auxilio, and to keep the 3 drivers who are near retirement stay, or near the retirement, to stay on as Gladwin Community School employees. I would have preferred a millage vote, but since there's no support for that, I think I need to support the option that will, you know, do the, be the best of what I can see is the other options. So I know that if I make a motion that requires a millage, it's going to fail. So there is no point in doing that. So I would like to make the motion to basically the same motion that Carol made to go with option 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you wanna,
Yes.
clarification in your motion, do you want to place in your motion to not go for a millage in the spring?
I wouldn't do that, because that's a decision.
No.
that you make.
Leave that open.
Okay.
That's,
I mean, you can make any motion you want, really, but I think that's
no, I think,
combining issues that.
no.
I thought we already voted on before.
A different person made the motion,
Yeah,
Kelly.
you can do that. Robert's rule says you can do that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
All right, so Linda has moved that we accept option number 4 as presented. Is there a second to her motion?
I'll second.
Lisa seconds. So Linda Winarski has moved to approve and accept option number 4. Lisa Schwager has seconded the motion. Is there any further discussion or questions?
Yeah, my discussion is with the idea that if we can break even, then I think we have a plus here. And I don't think we have to make $70,000 off from this decision. That's why I voted no on the last motion. We're not here to try, I mean, it would be great if somebody wanted to give us $70,000 and roll it into our budget, I'm all for it. But I also believe that if we can, under the circumstances and under the situation that we're in, and with what we're looking at, to be able to get our kids here safely and be able to run our transportation, then my feeling is if we break even, that's a plus. We're in the good.
Thank
That's
you.
why I would encourage this option.
I suppose I have a question on this, Rick, on option 4. What is our worst case scenario with option 4? Is there a scenario where we still end up expenditures over revenue with option 4?
There's always that risk. You don't know what's gonna happen without a crystal ball. On paper, it comes out very close to even. But what is on paper right now may not be the reality, on June 30th of next year. A lot can happen. There's a lot of things that can happen that could affect the bottom line, so. On paper right now, yeah, break even or close.
We approved a balanced budget last year, correct?
Yep.
And we ended up expenditure over revenues because of extenuating circumstances.
Yep, it happens.
And the reason why I went with option 1 in the first place was because of the fact that if extenuating circumstances happen again, and we're in that same situation again, there's only so many times we're gonna pull it off. And then we're gonna be right in that situation where, okay, now what's gonna get cut because we made these decisions. I suppose in the interest of getting something done, if you guys wanna roll the dice, I mean, I guess just don't say it until you so.
Is, the $70,000 issue difference between option 1 and option 4, is that just the payroll situation with the 19-year people?
Yes,
So that's per year.
yes, that's per year. Yep.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
Let's do a roll call vote again.
Yes.
Deanne,
Yes.
Darlington,
Yes.
Winarski, yes. Hightower,
Yes.
Gower,
No.
and Schwager.
Yes.
Mr. Withrow is absent. Motion passes.
Motion carried. Anything else?
just you would need a motion from the board to direct me to enter into discussions with Auxilio Transportation Services with the end result being the contract that will come to the board for approval at a later date.
All right, I move that we direct Mr. Seebeck to enter into contract talks with Auxilio Transportation.
Second.
All right, I have moved, Kelly has seconded. Any questions or discussion on this motion? Ready? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Okay. All right, being there no further business, we stand adjourned at 6:58.